All right, guys, welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast. As always, presented by my good friends over at ScentLock. Guys, the activated carbon technology found in ScentLock is absolutely what sets it apart, especially for bow hunting whitetails. Their BE1 toolkit is an entire toolkit from the gloves down to the belt and everything in between. And I promise you, you can whitetail hunt from early season all the way to late season with that BE1 toolkit. So if you're a bow hunter, I would highly encourage you to check out the BE1 toolkit from ScentLock. Guys, I've got a good friend of mine on the phone today, Mr. Kip Etter from Wellington, Kansas. He is the owner of my hometown gun shop here, Powder and String Outfitters. And we kind of talked through this idea of working hard so that we can hunt hard, but we also have to have some fun along the way in order to keep our head in the game. And so, guys, a really good episode, a really good reminder after a long, hard season of why we do what we do and how to, keep our head right for hunting, but also getting to work right now for next season. So, guys, make sure and tune in for what I can promise you is going to be a good episode.
Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, where hunters new and old come to learn and find inspiration from stories of hunts gone by. Everyone is welcome to enjoy the outdoor way of life, and there is no better time to start than right now. So let's head into the great outdoors with your host, Dylan Ray.
All right, Kip, so give us an introduction to yourself, to Powder and String, to what you do, kind of how this all started.
Well, first of all, thank you, Dylan, so much for having me on here. I really appreciate it. I was born and raised here, in the flyover states, Kansas. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. Yeah. Literally.
Yeah.
We have.
It was 70 yesterday. Now it's like 29.
Yeah. It's love it. There's a lot to be said about Kansas, but man, the hunting is just, it's good. I mean, and it's not just, we're known for our whitetail, but it's not just that. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff to hunt.
Some of the best. And dude, I grew up in southern Arkansas where deer hunting is quote unquote king. And I come here and I start duck hunting and I'm like, dude, duck hunting in Arkansas kind of sucks compared to this. Like,
I had an experience one time. I was able, a real good friend of mine, I moved and I lived for quite a while in Phoenix. And so, showing my age a little bit, but Ducks Unlimited magazine, every time it came, I was, reading it from front to back, and you always heard about out west, they talked about hunting on the Colorado River and that flyaway. And so a buddy of mine, his family had a hunt club that they were a part of. And so he's like, hey, you want to go? I was like, absolutely. I've read about this thing in Ducks Unlimited, just a dream. And we go out there, and I'm not saying by any means that it wasn't a great time and everything, but it just was it was one of them times where I was like, the reality of what you have in your own backyard. The grass isn't always greener, and we're out there hunting, and boy, we did see some 40 to 60, 80 group birds of pintails, of sprigs and stuff. And I remember this, that we had one greenhead in this group, and these guys are just slobbering over the greenhead. And I'm like, dude, you guys can shoot all the greenheads you want. You can have at that.
I want the pintails.
I want the pintail, because we see them around here, but we don't shoot them like we do the greenheads.
Right.
But it's just a real diverse hunting. But I was born and raised here. Kind of the same story that a lot of people have. I left, went to college, grew up, got married, have kids. Just recently became a grandpa. Love it. It's the awesomest.
You look like a grandpa too.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. With friends like you,
who needs enemies?
Exactly. There you go. But now, I've owned several different businesses. I've kind of been a business person my whole life. And funny story, I guess. I probably 3 or 4 years ago, I got idea. I was like, well, I'm just going to get my FFL license because there's, let's see what it's about. I'm just going to do it home based. I had some other businesses. And so my wife told me, don't ever come home with some harebrained idea that you're going to open up a gun shop. And I legitimately had zero desire, was not on my radar, didn't want to do it, and made her the promise. fast forward about a year and a half, all of a sudden COVID hits, and we own a restaurant and bar here in Wellington, and so with COVID, everything kind of got flipped on its head, and we were really looking at expanding with our restaurant, and so one of the buildings that we owned was sitting there vacant and had been, and it used to be a eye doctor building, and so my wife comes home right after Christmas of 20, and she says, "Hey, what do you think about turning that vacant building? What do you think about turning that into a gun shop?" And I looked at her like this was candid camera, and she was, having a joke, and thought it was, I was waiting for the
punchline.
Well, I didn't know how do I answer this? This is a trick question. And so, really we opened this, it's just an old downtown building, historic building. And we opened it, and, I'd like to say that, I had this great vision. The good Lord was really, had a huge part of it, as he does in everything, but he, we opened, and then I ended up meeting our engraver, Brian Strange, class act guy. Then we have our in-house gunsmith, and we were opening during pandemic, and it, I guess ignorance is bliss sometimes, and I didn't know what I didn't know, and so I contacted my distributors at the time, which I only had a couple, and I said, "Hey, I got this, we're going to harebrained idea, we're going to do this." And so I had a goal of opening within 3 months with just having 50 firearms, and everybody I talked to in the industry is like, "You're crazy. You couldn't get a box of ammo, much less a gun."
Right.
And lo and behold, we opened up 3 months later, 70 guns, and we haven't looked back. And then all of a sudden, here we are, you and I are talking, and it's, we've got growth that we've just can't even imagine. It's just going, we're very lucky. We're very blessed. We're surrounded with a good team of people, and just extremely happy with the way everything's gone.
I've had the ability now to bring in, just a couple guys from out of town and show them the shop, and, they see Wellington, they're like, "Oh, small town, how good's their gun shop going to be?" And then you bring them in, they're like, "Oh crap, dude, like they have everything." And I'm like, "Yeah, this isn't like some rinky-dink operation here." And so that's kind of why I wanted to have you on, man, because the question I get asked most, even outside of regards to hunting, but the question I get asked the most is, how do you take your passion and turn that into a career? Whether it be guns or bow hunting or big game hunting specifically, or small game hunting, or take it hunting outside the picture. I mean, some guys weightlifting or dieting or whatever. Me and you don't do that stuff, but no.
I just started. It is the new year.
Yeah. So you've been
once.
He said, "I've missed 2 days already." I'm like, "It's the third, Kip."
Yeah. I went 2 days in my head, and then I really did.
I've only missed 2 days at the gym this year.
Show off. Overachiever.
No.
Yeah.
So that really, though, that's the question I get asked the most.
That is,
and I will say there's some dangers to it too, though.
You're exactly right. It is a fine line to walk.
Yeah.
I honestly, they say if you have a job that you enjoy, you'll never work a day in your life. And that can be true. And I can also tell you that there's a saying out there that people say, well, the reason that I work 60 or 80 hours a week as a self-employed is so I don't have to work for somebody else. And that's also true. Just starting this business has required an enormous amount of effort and understanding from my family. And they may not be, they pitch in and help all the time, but they may not be down here every single day, but boy, they're picking up my shortcomings, if you will. And I'm just really blessed that I have that. But it's the funny that you bring that up, because just this morning, a good friend of mine, unfortunately had his father pass away, and he and I were talking, and, we actually were just talking about this exact conversation here. And I'm one of those individuals that, when I dive into something, man, I go all out. And, when I say that, I kind of jokingly say, well, when we started this thing, it was just going to be, three afternoons a week, me down here by myself. And I was just going to get caught up on paperwork and stuff with other stuff, my other businesses. And I say that, and in my mind, I genuinely meant that. But anybody that knows me, all my buddies were like, dude, we knew you, we knew this was not what you were going to do. And, I don't know. I've just always been the type of person where if I'm going to do something, why are you going to do it? Kinda.
Yeah.
Why are you going to
100%.
do it? So, go hard or go home. And so that's kind of the way we've taken it. But in that conversation today, what I had, with my good buddy was, I had kind of lost track of that. I'd lost my basis, lost center, and I was not hunting as much as I wanted to. And I was not, spending time out in the woods. And that's truly who I was. That was what I was raised, up doing.
Yeah.
And in my first, experience in adulthood, if you will, I was just a manager at a small restaurant and bar, but I was able to, in that position, I was able to schedule all of my, late fall and winter and early springtime around hunting. And so, I just, that was everything to me. And then, all of a sudden here, you fast forward, life happens, you have kids, family, and I'd really lost track of that. And so I'm so blessed and lucky that we have this thing going in the direction that we have going and the growth that we're looking at, because it's just absolutely, it's refreshing to see it. And it's challenging, and it's got its ups and it's got its downs, but man, we're just, every day we're doing the best we can to grow and get better than we were the day before.
Yeah.
And it's just,
well, that's 100%, man. Being somebody, from the outside in, watching this thing take place. I not only, and I've watched you, in other businesses and, with other endeavors, and I've always sat back and watched you and just thought, man, I'm glad to see somebody when they do something, they do it with everything they've got. You know what I mean? And that's what,
thank you.
So my biggest piece of advice is if you want to do something, you have to give it everything you've got. Like,
I would agree.
If you want to turn something into a living, there is no well, every Saturday night from 9 to 10, I'll work on it. Like, no, You've got to dive in full force. And, you knew me 8 years ago when I moved here into town.
Yeah.
And I was really trying to get into the outdoor industry.
Yeah.
And in those times, man, I promise you this, I spent a whole lot of money trying to get in the outdoor industry. Yeah. And people are looking and they're like, man, how cool is it to make your living in the outdoor industry? I'm like, no. I've got my 9 to 5, and then I get home and I spend not only a whole lot of time, but a whole lot of money.
Right.
To try and make this happen.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes. You have to just dive in full force if you ever want to turn something into a living.
And you're exactly right. And again, how could I have known that my journey to where we are with Powder and String today, it never crossed my mind, never was on my radar that when our paths crossed back then, that it was going to be where it is today. And that all of a sudden here we are, sitting here talking. But you're exactly right. If you're going to do something, there's no reason to do it, 50%. And you better believe that if you're going to be, whatever the industry is, if you're going to be successful, there is somebody out there that's going to be busting their rear to try and make it. And you don't always know everything. Part of learning, part of the growth and part of the experience is that learning. And there's a saying that I always that I've pieced together from other people. I'm a big reader. I used to read more when I had more time, but I've pieced it together from several different books that I've read and self-help things like that a lot of us will listen to, podcasts and things like that. But there's an infinite amount of things that you have no control over in business, in life, and there's a finite amount of things that you have control over. And so it's imperative that you are as close to perfect as you can be on the things that you do have control over, so that not if, but when something that you don't anticipate happening happens, that you're in the best position, you're positioned the best that you possibly can to deal with that catastrophe or that, bump or that whatever it is. And, I just try to focus on that and, remind myself of that all the time. And also my staff, that. And so, you have to work hard. It's, I like Gary V, and Gary V will tell you, he's like, I'm going to work harder than you. I guarantee you're going to work harder. I guarantee I'm going to work harder than you. Well, I've always kind of said the same thing. Like, I don't ever want to have anybody that knows me or anybody that works for me ever say, well, that guy didn't work hard. And working hard doesn't mean. I had a guy tell me once who's really successful say, work smart, not hard. Well, I'll tell you, he said the same thing. I used to think, well, work smart, not hard. You got to work hard and you got to work smart.
Yeah.
Period. The end. I mean,
sometimes you got to work hard to work smart.
Yeah. And you know what? Lucky. You can get lucky, but also a lot of times people will are perceived to get lucky.
Yeah.
But it's because they position themselves.
And everything you're saying, it's funny because everything you're saying is so incredibly applicable to hunting, especially bow hunting. Like, I hear guys all the time, and they'll take people, and I'm not going to name any names, but it doesn't take a quick Google search to figure it out. But the guy that just shot the new world record for mule deer, non-typical velvet mule deer, he was quoted as saying, like, I had no idea the deer was there. I just stumbled upon him. Essentially. And so everybody's like, oh, he's lucky, dude. He's not a good hunter. He's a lucky hunter. And I'm like, no. Because it goes back to what you just said. He controlled everything that he could. He couldn't control whether there was a 250-inch buck in there or a 140-inch buck. He couldn't control that. He stumbled upon public ground, and that was something that was out of his control. But what he could control was making sure that when that 250 stepped out or whatever it was, I mean, ungodly, 320 something, I don't know.
It was monster.
Yeah, I mean, it's big
crazy
for an elk, much less a mule deer. But anyways, but what he can't control is when that deer steps out, he's put himself in a position to kill it.
Well, and I would almost guarantee you, and obviously we can sit here and make assumptions all we want sitting here between the two of us, but I would almost guarantee you that he probably had done some homework with regards to the area.
100%.
And he knew that, based upon the statistics and based upon data that he was able to go look at, he was able to say, all right, I'm going to put in for this draw, or I'm going to hunt this area. And he knows that area produces big animals. And just because an area produces big animals doesn't mean you're going to get a big deer or a big animal or whatever it is. But if it produces, it's had a history, then you've got a higher statistic to get quote unquote lucky.
Yeah. And that's one thing, like, so there's so many tools out there, like, to be utilized. And, it goes back exactly to what you're saying. Like, dude, people don't even know this, but like, everybody's like, oh, I don't want to enter my deer into Pope and Young. I don't want to, it's not about me, it's about the deer, all that crap. Well, it's actually about conservation.
Amen.
And what I can do is I can log on to Pope and Young, go to pope-young.org and go to trophy search. And if I'm headed to Colorado for an elk hunt, you can look county by county what county produces the most Pope and Young animals, the biggest Pope and Young animals. And then that gives me a really good place to start on where I'm going to hunt. And those are the kind of resources that I guarantee you guys like that are using. They're not just stumbling. Although he used the word stumbling upon a new world record, he put himself in a position to do that.
Absolutely.
And that's what going back to business and going back to life, like, that's what it takes, dude. People don't stumble into 60 years of marriage. They work for 60 years of marriage.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah, I can tell you, you want to learn, relationships and just a relationship with regards to, business relationship, personal relationship, marriage. It's work. And I can tell you one of the things that personally that helped me, with my ability to have relationships was when I moved away, and I was by myself. I moved from, Kansas to Phoenix, Arizona, and I had an aunt and a couple of cousins that lived there. But other than that was it. And the first time, all my family lived within 30 miles of here. And all of a sudden you're out there on an island by yourself and everybody's going to birthday parties. Everybody's you have to put in the work. And then you realize real quick that you can just be forgotten, and it takes work. Again, it's nothing is easy, but it's work. And, you've got to put in the extra effort. It's hunting's a lot like sports. I mean, the guy that's going to put in the off season work or, scout. You want to scout. Well, part of scouting it's not just going out with a set of binoculars, at 3:00 in the afternoon and before dusk. And it starts
months.
You can start it, if you can't sleep at night, 3:00 in the morning, get up, hey, start looking on Pope and Young and start finding out word statistics.
Onyx, stand, like use all those tools.
And you say Onyx, and it's so funny to me that you talked about tools. I can remember, and I'm showing my age a little bit, but I'm in my 40s, but I can remember I thought I was
the bee's knees.
I thought I was the bee's knees. I thought I had the smartest idea in the whole world one time. And I had a buddy of mine that was a pilot. And I was like, hey, whenever you go up next time, why don't you take me up? And I want to go look at my hunting ground. Like I was the only one, you have to remember this is the 90s. So this is before internet and all this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I'm the only one that's ever thought of this. So you get a whole other perspective of it. Little did I know that, everybody's been doing it. And there's actually laws in most states that say you can't hunt the day, which it should be. But I was doing that back then to get a different perspective, a topographical perspective, which,
right.
You've got the maps and stuff, but we didn't have like the satellite imagery like you have now. But even with OnX, I would tell you, those are taken at certain times of the year, depending upon
right.
whenever the satellite's flying over or whatever, and they're updated and all that. But actually having boots on the ground out there, looking at your ground or looking at it from an aerial view, now drones. So, here it was, if you look at the transition of all this, even though we have OnX, I still think that, if you really want to get into new ground, if you've got new ground that you just found, and especially if it's big, if it's a lot of acreage, to me, when I'm hunting deer, I'm hunting pinch points. That's the first thing I look for, pinch point, because I'm busy. Time is extremely important to me. And when I go out to sit in the woods, I want to have the best opportunity to have a return on my investment, which is time, because that's very, it's a resource to me.
Yeah. And I think that with a lot of people, they don't get the part of working hard in order to find success in the field. And I can tell you this, the most successful hunters I know are the hardest working hunters I know. Mm-hmm. Like people are, well, let's just take Chuck Adams, for instance.
I'm glad you said that name.
People are like,
Icon.
man, he killed 3 new world records in a month.
In one hunt.
In one trip. Yeah, that's what they'll say, in one trip. And I'm like, but do you understand?
Oh, yeah. When I say hunt, it was one trip.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I meant by it.
And I'm like, but I told somebody this, but do you understand? Dude went in for 35 plus days alone in a tent in Alaska.
You've had a podcast with him, and he's on other podcasts, and I'm a big fan of Chuck Adams, have been forever. It's still amazing to me that you'll say that and say, well, who Chuck Adams is to somebody who's an archer hunter. And I mean, he's just an absolute icon. I mean, next to Robin Hood, he's the second most popular, probably, bow hunter that there is out there. But but if you listen to him talk, he's very strategic in what he does. He's not just, he's enjoying the hunting. Absolutely. And well, I guess for me, it's not that I enjoy all of that preparation. I enjoy all of that time leading. That's all the hunt to me.
But there's no playing around with him. Like dude, I get to share camp with him in December. We're going to go hunt whitetails in Oklahoma. And I've been told by several people.
Do you need somebody to be like a
caddy?
Well, I'll be a caddy? Cook. Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah. You need it. Like an African safari. I can be your tracker. I'll be your photographer.
There you go. There are tickets. You can buy tickets for the raffle to come on the hunt with us. But
I wouldn't be lying if I said that I bought one already.
But I've had several people reach out and like, dude, sharing camp with Chuck sucks. I'm like, what do you mean? It's Chuck Adams. Like, dude, he don't play. Like, it's not like, some guys you get back to camp and it's like, let's play cards and let's, have a cup of coffee or play poker. And, it's not like that with Chuck. He leaves before you wake up and you don't see him for the rest of the day.
I don't doubt it. That step from what I've read and what I've listened.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never met the man, but I mean, when I hear him talk about those things, that's what I see. And, we're already talking with the ground that we have. We're already talking, all right, food plots. Where are we going to, with regards to trail cameras or feeding, I used to, I guess as I've come along, I've evolved, I guess, or I don't know, I guess we all get smarter or whatever, but I used to be the guy that, if I was going to feed the deer, I just fed them corn, dump it on the ground. Well, then I evolved to get a feeder. Then I evolved. And I used to just, I'm going to put it out right during season. Well, that wasn't it's hunting, but you still got to put yourself in the right place at the right time. It's not just like, it's not shooting, fish in a barrel, but at all. But it is setting yourself up for success. But now what we do, we actually supplement with, supplements with feed. Now we'll have a little bit of corn in there, and we do it all year round. And so we are feeding that herd, if you will, to help them through the times where, we just had a heck of a drought here. And so we were going around to our few spots that we had that didn't have water, and we were actually making sure that they had water. So we were putting water out, and you would not believe, we put a trail camera on it, how many animals that were, coming to do the quail, dove.
I actually mentioned this on it's actually a Pope and Young podcast, and I was talking about hunting here in Kansas and the drought we had, and I asked, it was Frank Noska, because he's big on water holes, and I was asking him, I said, basically I was asking him, do you think that water holes would work here in the Midwest in Kansas? And, we talked for a little bit about it and the logistics behind it. And it wasn't long before I get an email from a good friend of mine, Jim Willems, who was the past president of Pope and Young. Now he's still a board member of Pope and Young, but just kills giants every year, like with his recurve 190s, kind of guy. And he sends me an email, and it just says water holes. And I'm like, what is this? And I open it up, and it's just pictures of giants on water holes. And he's like, yes, they work in Kansas. And I'm like, wow, there you go.
Yeah, that's interesting because, most of the ground that we hunt is creeks. So I'd be interested to see that. But I can tell you that, with this last drought, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no question.
Well, that's what, and I don't even know if I've given you this scenario yet, but last year, my in-laws own 5 acres. Okay. Not a lot, just 5 acres. And I've never hunted out there. It's never been worth it. I've put like the first year I moved here, I put trail cameras out, and I'm just like, yeah, there's no deer here. Well, last year my wife said, well, I want to get into bow hunting, so I bought her a little Bear Legit, and got her all dialed in, and she was ready to hunt. So I'm like, well, let's go see if there's anything at your parents'. And I put up a camera, and I'm talking 7 shooters, and I was like, crap, on this little 5 acres. Well, 2 things changed since I moved here. Their dog died, which was on 5 acres. If a deer comes on the property, the dog runs it off. So the dog died, and the neighbor built a massive pond, so it was holding more deer. And so last year, this place was just like outrageously cool. Like she would go and sit and see 30 deer in a night on 5 acres.
Right.
And then this year I put out a camera, and I had told her, I'm like, well, I'm finding somewhere else for you to hunt because this is my spot now. Right. And so I put out a camera and tree stands and all this stuff, and I had a camera out for 2 months, and I saw 1 spike. And I'm like, what in the world? Last year I would see 40 deer in a day. I had 7 different shooters out here. What's going on? And turns out that pond had dried up.
Yep.
And that's what kind of started these wheels turning about a water hole.
Yeah, I've had I've had guys that know far more and hunted way more than I have, but and I believe the exact same as them. The landscape around here has changed from a farming standpoint, an agricultural standpoint. It has changed drastically. Back in when I was first hunting in the 90s, we didn't have much row crop at all. Corn was almost non-existent. We had a little bit of alfalfa, but Wellington's the wheat capital of the world, so we had wheat. Well, that's obviously, and it's changed drastically. So there's all kinds of, row crop, milo, corn. We got a lot of alfalfa, and it's changed because of farming practices, right, wrong, or indifferent. But those big deer, especially the big deer, you put them in a cornfield with a wet spring and summer.
Yeah.
They aren't leaving.
Right.
They have no reason. They got food, they got cover, they got water. They're good. They're chill. And I really believe, deer are whitetails are a lot like, like we are. I mean, we're animals. It's not, you have to, at least I do. I have to check myself for not being lazy, I'm, get off the couch, go do something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so if you just had somebody that was just going to feed you,
this is the very best time to start scouting.
I would agree completely. And the other thing,
very best time,
another thing we had some on our podcast, we had some guys come on, some of our pro staffers come on, and they were talking about year round, basically inventorying the animals that they have, because it's not just their antlers that you use to identify them, but you can use other, traits. We had one, I had one, I think I showed you the picture a couple of years ago. I've still got he's still on the ground, and if he's past his prime, but he's one of those that I've got the experience with him. So if he shows himself, I'm gonna give it a whack. But we call him split ear. His ear got split, must have been in a fight or something. And I jumped out of a stand one morning. I had to go to a meeting, and so I was scanning the field to see if there was any other deer, back behind my son-in-law that was hunting, and because he was still going to stay in the stand. And so I'm literally standing, and I come across this little creek bottom, and I come up out of the creek bottom, and I look around beforehand, and so to say, know what I'm doing. I'm seasoned, so don't see anything. It's rut. I mean, and it's rut. It is that 1 or 2 days where they're on full on stupid. And I take one step, I get up out of this creek bed, and I stand right there, and I just stop. And all of a sudden, within 3 or 4 seconds, I hear something directly to my right, and I look over, and at 8 yards is this 150 class, 10 point. And I put my bow when I got out of the stand on my back, because this particular stand, I was like literally 10 yards from one direction from the property line. And where I moved to, I was like still, 5 or 10 yards one direction and 8 or 10 the other. And I was like, I'm not going to put myself in that position where some booner's sitting over there, and I gotta, check my character as a person, as if I'm, 200 inch deer sitting over there, and he's at 8 yards, just, full on stupid with rut. So here I am with my bow on my back, and this dude is working a scrape. I mean, he's just tearing it up, and and then he's at 8 yards, and then he closes to within like 3 feet, and he's standing there looking at me, and I had my phone out, and so I was able to hit record, and I got video of it, or nobody would have believed me. And he's standing at, I'm going to say 5 feet. And all of a sudden, he doesn't know I'm there, but he knows something's off, but he's just, he's amped up. And all of a sudden, and there's nothing between he and I, there's a little sapling like 3 inches around to my left. And he takes a step towards me. I'm thinking, oh crap, he smells something. I'm going to be that guy on the television. And I think it's getting ready to get on. And then another buck runs by chasing a doe, and he peels off and goes for him. And I got the whole thing on video. But that deer, we have him on trail camera again, and there's old split ear. So everybody's got, that's, to me, that's one of the funnest things, is naming the deer. Hey, we got a new one, and trying to come up, what are we going to call him? And so we come up with names for him. But that's part of the the experience. And with getting new people into hunting and stuff, I started around, growing up, upland hunting, pheasant and quail. That's what I started. And I mean, to tell you, I couldn't get enough. Loved it, ate it up. Then went into waterfowl. Wow, you want to talk about just the interactive and the camaraderie sitting in the blind and everything. So it just added to it. Then comes, bow hunting. And it speaks for itself, everybody. I mean, it's popular like it is for the reason. But it wasn't until probably 5 or 7 years into my hunting experience, my late teens, early 20s, and I go turkey hunting, and I'm like, holy cow. Now that's a different deal because of the interaction.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that some people don't I'm not going to say they don't like, but one of the downfalls to deer hunting, especially whitetail, is that you just go sit in the stand, and then you just got to wait for something to come by. Well, not if you start doing
that is my addiction to whitetail hunting. Like, not, some people, and my job is taking me to all out west. And, you talk to all these Western hunters, and they're like, dude, you're not a hunter. You sit in a tree stand. And I'm like, you're not a hunter. You hunt for 1 week a year. Like, I'm hunting year round because whitetail hunting is a year-long chess match.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is
Yeah.
that if you add that additional element for those people that may not like that, I'm sitting in a tree stand for 3 hours or 4 hours or, like.
Yeah, but you didn't sweat your
exactly
nays off hanging tree stands in 90-degree weather. You didn't. You had to trim lanes. You had to plant food plots. You had to, hang cameras and it's this year-long chess. Now, don't get me wrong, dude. I'm a sucker for elk hunting. I love bear hunting. Like, don't get me wrong. It's really fun to get out of the truck and say, okay, I have 1 week to find them and kill them. Like, that's a blast. But it's really fun, in my opinion. January 1. You start putting out trail cameras. You start shed hunting, in a couple months. You start, right now, again, I said right now is the best time to scout because there's still fresh scrapes. There's still fresh rubs everywhere in the woods. They're going crazy right now.
Yeah, they're still trying to hit the few does that didn't get
bred. And so you can you can look at all those things right now, and it teaches you a whole lot for September.
Well, and I think
October, November.
And there's all kinds of different schools of thought, and I'm not saying that my way is the right way at all.
But it is.
No, until it's not.
Yeah.
Until it's not. But
always the right way until it fails.
Yeah, it works. What is it? 80% of the time, or 50% of the time that works every time, or 80% of the time works every time. Yeah, exactly. But for me, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Is for me, when I put a trail camera out, most of the time I'm leaving that trail camera out. The vast majority of the trail cameras I put out, and I don't put a ton of them out, and I'm using it. The trail camera is one more tool in my arsenal. It's and it doesn't do everything. I still out there with a pair of binoculars and all that, but I'm hunting pinch points, or I'm putting trail cameras in corridors, so that way I'm using it as a ability to get an inventory of what I have out there.
Absolutely.
But I can tell you that when the rut hits, and even after, these deer, they have a territory, but we've all either witnessed it while we're out in the woods, or we've all seen, the National Geographic or hunting shows where I don't care if it's bison, I don't care if it's elk, I don't care, whatever it is, the dominant wins, and then the other one gets ran off. So they're moving and they're changing. So just because you've got an inventory of deer, that doesn't mean that you're going to seal the deal.
I've also found sheds based off trail cameras. Like, if I've got a property where two are set up, and I have a picture of a deer at 9:05 in the morning, and he's got both sets, and then at 9:33, I've got him on this camera, and he lost it. I'm like, okay, so somewhere between there and there, there's a fresh shed of sheds.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I go right to him.
Yeah, absolutely. We had one this year. One of our trail cameras. We had 2 bucks. One was he's a decent 10-pointer. Probably 140s, 150s, something like that. Nothing real big, but there was also a 6-pointer in there, and he was, just a little basket case 6-pointer. They're both in the picture, and then all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, 6-pointer is coming back, and he's just a 3-pointer. And it was during the rut, so you can connect the dots, and you can figure out real quick who won the fight.
Yeah. Speaking of trail cameras, guys, I got to give a shout out to my guys over at Muddy Outdoors. I am a massive fan of all things Muddy. I've come to learn one thing. There's names in the hunting industry you can trust, and if it says Muddy, I know I can trust it. From my tree stands to my ground blinds to my trail cameras to all the accessories to go along with it. I know if it says Muddy, I know it's going to last. I know it's going to be quality, and their cellular trail cameras are no different. I have come to love their cellular cameras for one reason. I know I can trust them, and I know they're going to work, and I can buy 2 or 3 for the price of some other cameras. And so right now, actually, the Morph cellular trail camera is on sale for buy one, get one free. It's an incredible deal. That means for $180, you're getting 2 incredible cellular trail cameras. And we're talking about how long we leave them out. We're talking about how much we use cellular trail cameras. So I would highly encourage you. You'll save your money in about a year if you'll just buy some of the solar panels from Muddy and plug it straight into your camera. You'll save that in batteries in about a year. So I would highly encourage you to go check out Muddy Outdoors.
I don't think it takes a year.
Not even a year. But guys, go to gomuddy.com and check them out for all things hunting, all the accessories and harnesses, tree stands, ground blinds, everything you need. I promise you, if it says Muddy, it's a name you can trust. Kip, you mentioned something earlier I want to go back to. You mentioned having lost sight of like why you do what you do and why you started what you started. And I think that's the biggest issue when people make their living in doing what they love. There comes a point where they lose sight of their love for it.
Mm-hmm.
So to combat that, we've talked about working hard, hunting hard. I think you got to play hard too. Like, and I don't mean to make that like such a cliche.
You're
but
exactly right. You need to reward yourself.
Yeah, and so dude, like I was in the same place this year. Like I told my wife at one point, I'm like, I can never say this has been true before, but I don't even want to hunt. Like I don't even want to go out and hunt right now. And it was like a cold snap in October 30th, and I'm like the prime time, and I'm like, I didn't have the desire to hunt. Like, and I don't know why, but now I know why. Like looking back, because again, you've lost sight of why you do what you do. And sometimes there's this negative connotation with working in the hunting industry that you've got to kill big deer, and you've got to put something on the ground that you can be proud of. Let me just say this. If you're worried about the picture you're going to take with your animal afterwards, you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yep, you're doing it for the wrong reason.
And every single time that's the case, you're going to lose sight of why you love it.
Mm-hmm.
Like every time. Every time social media and the comments you'll get and all that stuff starts coming in your head, every time that happens, you're going to lose sight of why you love hunting.
Yeah.
And that was the exact thing that happened to me this year.
Yeah.
So what I did, and I'm just telling you, if you've come to that place, I'm going to tell you how to combat that. Grab a bow, go out and say, whatever tickles my fancy, I'm going to shoot it. And I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm not going to think twice. I might not even take a picture of it. I might not even post a picture of it. And that doesn't matter. So that's exactly what I did. I grabbed my bow this year in Kansas, and I said, you know what? I can worry about big deer in Oklahoma. I can worry about big deer in Missouri. I'm going out and I'm just going to shoot something, whatever I see. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, this little dinky 6-point came out. Like I never would have even dreamed of shooting this deer, but I'm like, yeah, let's torch him. And it just reminds me, like, who in the crap cares what you think?
Yeah,
like,
you can't get caught up in what other people think. It's much easier said than done, especially in the media world that we have now, and how accessible everybody is, and how little amount of privacy that we have to ourselves. But you're exactly right. They say that's why they call it fishing, not catching. It's also why we call it hunting and not killing. I can tell you there's been times where I've gone several years without shooting a deer, and it wasn't an unsuccessful season. I saw deer that, that most people would shoot, but it wasn't I was out there enjoying, God's world, if you will, and seeing all the beauty and having the experience. To me, the reward was not necessarily the trophy at the end. It was the experience, the camaraderie with my buddies, my son-in-law, my, whoever it may be that I'm out there, experiencing that time with my, family member, anybody that you're out and now that we've started this business, my daughter, I've got 2 daughters and a son, all of them have hunted. My wife has never hunted, but now all of a sudden my middle daughter who has hunted with me the most of the 3, if you will, of my kids, all of a sudden she's talking about, hey, I think I want to go out and do this more. And, now she just had a little baby of her own, and she's starting to, see that. And so here we are, kind of coming full circle, and, it maybe it takes a little bit longer. Man, I couldn't tell you, I could not be more excited about going and having that experience with my daughter, and then my granddaughter, just being born. Like I'm so excited for what the next, 20 years are going to be.
You've been a little giddy lately.
And I don't care, honestly, and I genuinely mean this. I don't care if I shoot anything.
Yeah.
But, that being said, I like the experience.
Right.
And so it's not just about that. And I also, I like meat on the table. I like to know where my food came from, that kind of stuff too. But
I think sometimes we get so serious about hunting too. Like, and I know this is completely contradictory to what we've been talking about, but if your goal is to shoot new world records and get as many animals in Pope and Young as you can, absolutely, you got to take it serious. But
absolutely.
But sometimes I think as everyday outdoorsmen, we take hunting so serious that then we hate it. And you know, I think back, there was 2 times this year where I took my boy out. And, you know, I'll be honest, I took him on hot days where I didn't think much was going to happen. I certainly didn't take him, you know, in the middle of the rut when there was a cold drop, a temperature drop, because I had a good chance of shooting a buck. And so I didn't take him those times. But there were 2 times where, like, a coyote ran by, and he's like, "Let's go get him, Dad." And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's go get him. Like, because it's fun. Like, it's fun to crawl across the ground trying to kill a coyote. Like, we got 30 yards from a coyote. Like, that's just fun.
And he's going to remember that.
He's going to. Now, sure, we blew all the deer out of the area, and all the deer were gone. And there my son stands in the middle of a field howling at this coyote. Like, we blew all the opportunities at a deer, but we had fun. Like, we played. You know what I mean? And so I think you've got to work hard. You've got to hunt hard if you want to be successful. But if you want to be successful, you've also got to play pretty hard.
Yeah. Well, just this conversation here, if you listen to the first, 3 minutes and then you listen to the last 3 minutes, you're like, well, these guys are talking circles. But I think there's, hearing you speak, 2 words came to mind: balance, perspective.
100%.
Balance and perspective.
Well, and here's, going back to part of my issue too, was you take it so serious that it becomes unenjoyable. And, everything about your hunting is so centered, and it's so draining, and it's so tiring, and it's so...
Well, it's easy to get caught up in that rat race of social media and having to have the perfect picture.
Exactly.
And we got to take the picture from this angle because it makes it look bigger.
Yeah.
But if we extend our arms too far, then we're going to have somebody talking about, well, you made it look bigger than it. Dude.
Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's all... Everybody wants to shoot the biggest, or somebody wants to shoot the best, so to say. But, I don't know. The society with the participation trophies, not a big fan of that. I think we've created some of that. But if we just get back to basics of, this is, it's not only just about the hunting. It's definitely not about the killing. It's about the experience. And, when I got into, had the opportunity to start the shop here, and it's growing the way it is and taking off, one of the things that we take responsibility in is that this industry, the hunting industry, the shooting industry, the archery, all of it kind of, it overlaps and crosses one another, but we have a responsibility to pass that on. And so, there's a lot of, especially, if you look at the statistics with first-time gun buyers, there's an enormous amount of first-time gun buyers. And yes, some of those gun buyers are not ever going to, they bought it and it's just going to be a safe queen, so to say, or some of them bought it and they're just getting into the shooting side of it. And, the popularity of long distance shooting has just gone through the roof and all that. But there's a lot of those that are getting into the hunting side of it as well, or that's just a natural progression of getting into hunting. And so we all as outdoorsmen, we all as sportsmen, we all in this industry have a responsibility to show that maturity, the integrity, the right way to handle ourselves, because we've got enough people out there that are against us.
Well, you're right. I mean, if you listen to the first 5 minutes and then the last, you're like, you're so contradictory. No, what I mean by all of this is that if we don't get back to having fun when we're hunting, then we're not going to hunt hard. Like, what I learned this year is if I will have fun and play along the way, then I'll hunt harder in the end. But sometimes we get so focused on how hard we can hunt and all of these things that sometimes then it becomes draining and we don't want to do it anymore. And when we go out and we just have fun for a couple days, and I'm not telling you to go out on your very best piece of ground where your number one buck lives and go out and streak through the woods.
Perspective.
That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, hey, I don't have a great wind. I don't have a good place to go. I'm going to go out to my number 3 spot or my number 4 spot and just try to spot and stalk for the day. And yeah, I'm going to blow some deer out, but I'm going to have a blast doing it. Because then on the day where, dude, I've got the perfect wind, I've got the perfect set, I've got the perfect... Then I've had fun and I can go in and hunt really hard.
Well, and it's the same thing. Hunting is no different than anything else in life. You're not just born and all of a sudden you're an, NFL athlete.
Yeah.
They're less than 1% of all high school kids make it to the
Right.
NFL. So, but those individuals that do make it to that level all put in the effort. So if you're going out there and you're spot stocking, you're learning
a lot.
Yeah. And you know, another thing I had the other day, that one of our pro staffers said to us was, he said three things. It was, scout, hide, hunt.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I was just like, wow.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. It's like, that's really it. But
Yeah.
there's so much
I
more.
could literally see the light bulb above your head go off. No. But that, dude, like you said, I had already tagged out here in Kansas, couldn't kill a buck, but I wanted to go out and have some fun. And again, this is like, I was getting ready to head to Oklahoma. So I'm like, I just want to go out and have some fun. Then when I get to Oklahoma, I'm like dead set focused on hunting hard. And so I go out in Kansas, and I had the perfect property for this. It has a sandbank creek that runs all the way through the woods. And so I start at one end of the property, get down on my hands and knees, and crawl through that sand, like all the way through there. And dude, I got within 40 yards of like 5 bucks. I saw hundreds of does. I mean, just a great time. And you know, I was fully intentional on like if I have a shot at a doe, I have my recurve.
Absolutely.
If I have a shot at a doe, I'm torching her.
Yeah.
And I had a buddy with me, and I'm like, one specific instance that I learned a lot about bucks this throughout just playing and having fun. But I was like, all right, I'm going to go up this bank, and it's going to have to be loud. And like, I can't get out of the way that it's like a tree had fallen. So like we had to get out of the bank and go around this tree. So I'm like, I'm going to get up and get out, and it's going to be loud. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be louder intentionally, and I'm going to grunt the whole way out. Like, so if there is deer, they're going to think I'm a deer. And so I just bust out of this creek bank, just as I'm running, like I'm literally just look like a little kid, like frolicking through the woods. And I stop, and I'm like, man, there's a really good bedding area right in here. Like, I really thought we'd see some deer. So I'm like, I'm going to keep doing that. And I just keep, and I stop, and I'm like 4.5 yards from a giant buck, like just bedded right here. And he never one time turned and picked his head up and looked, because he thought I was just a buck. Never one time even crossed his mind to even think, what is that? You know, if it was just me walking through the woods, he was going to pop his head up, look, and sprint off. And so I'm like, dude, I just got within 5 yards. I'm talking a mid 150s, 160 deer.
Yeah.
Giant. And I got within 4 yards from him acting like an idiot. Like, but I realized if I just have the grunt in my mouth and make some noise that a deer would make, he's going to think I'm a deer. And so I literally ran through the woods and got 4.5 yards from this deer. And you learn a lot. Like,
yeah.
And then I went to Oklahoma. I played and I had fun. And then I went to Oklahoma dead set on like, let's hunt hard. Like, no matter what. Doesn't matter if it's 10 degrees and raining, we're going to hunt. And then you go into that with like just a breath of fresh air. Like, and then you can hunt harder because you played hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's perspective. Yeah. And you know, just trying to have that experience. And that's I guess that's kind of the thing that, you know, I'm most excited about with what we've been able to have happen and going on here is just that I'm super excited about that part of it, is being able to kind of come full circle and now being able to enjoy that with my kids and the rest of my family.
Absolutely,
It's just it's perspective. And yes, if you're gonna go hard, do everything you do it hard. Do it go as hard as, so that way when you're done, you're like, well, I may not have, you know, shot the biggest, or I may not have, you know, shot the most, or whatever it is, but man, I gave it my effort. I gave it my all. And your all is different than somebody else's all. It doesn't matter. It's not, that's the thing, that it's not up to somebody else to judge you on that.
I would also say quit expecting it to happen easy. Like, quit thinking like I'm going to go out and kill a big deer. And, you know, I've heard people and they say, dude, I've hunted 19 times this year and I haven't shot a buck yet. And I'm like, okay, you're just starting, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I've seen people hunt for years before they shoot their first buck with a bow.
Oh,
like,
yeah. And we make it out to seem like it's so easy.
So easy.
With a bow, especially. And, you know, my wife in her job, a lot of times she'll travel all over the U.S. and stuff. And so when she's on location, sometimes I'll go there and visit her, you know, for a little bit. And I always think it's funny that I'll run into guys and immediately, I'm a talker and stuff. And so I'll start talking. Obviously it always goes to outdoors. And I, like when we're in Texas or Florida, I'm always like, hey, I want to see the pictures on your phone of the bass that you catch.
Yeah.
And they want to see the pictures of the deer that we shoot here. And so, it's real easy also to remember or to forget that the grass isn't always greener. So, when I was, like I said, I was born and raised here, and then I left and went to school at Kansas State University, Wildcats. And when I went up there, I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm going to try and find a spot to hunt, while the week, but on the weekends, I'm going to go back home because I've got all this area that I can hunt that's, really good. And when I got up there, lo and behold, there was really prime hunting area up there as well. Well, then I move to, Arizona, and I realize, dude, I didn't have any idea how lucky I had it.
Then you got to start coos deer hunting. I'm sorry.
I have not done it yet.
Deer hunting.
Yeah, I have not done it yet, but it is on my bucket list. And I hear it's the hardest animal to hunt.
Yeah, they are. And I've never done it. I shouldn't have said it like I can confirm. But that going back to my addiction for whitetails, that's part of it, though. Like, they're the most widely hunted animal because they're the most widely available. Like, you can hunt them in the desert. You can hunt them in the mountains. You can hunt them in the big country. You can hunt them in the wheat fields. You can hunt them, I've hunted deer in desert places in Texas, and you're like, where are these deer going to hide?
The most deer that I've ever seen, my wife was working down in the hill country, down around San Antonio, Fredericksburg, absolutely beautiful area.
Yeah.
But when we would go, she was working down there for quite a while, so we would travel back and forth, and we would actually play a game to make sure that we were, driving at night, slowing down, counting deer. Yeah. And I literally would lose track of how many deer. Yeah. Now, they're about the size of a Labrador. Yeah. But they're not like the ones up here. But the population of deer down there are just unbelievable.
Well, and that's what, I love it so much because, you can just hunt them and it's a complete different hunt.
It's a completely different hunt. Totally different.
Like if you go to Texas, dude, like I said, I've literally showed up to hunt in Texas and I'm like, there's no deer here. It's desert. And then, sunset rolls around and you're like, there's 90 deer in front of me. Yeah. Like, where'd these come from?
Yeah, that's the same way I was when
what did they do? Go and dig a hole? Like, exactly. Where are these deer at?
Well, and even in Kansas, I've got a real good buddy of mine from college. His family owns some ground clear up in the northwest part of the Kansas, and it's a completely different world. Like from where we're at here. I talk to him. I talk to him pretty regularly, but here about probably 2 months ago, I called him and I was complaining to him about the drought we were having, and he's like, dude, we haven't had a drop of rain since October. Yeah. And it was 9 months after that. And I'm like, what? And so I asked him, I was like, so how many inches of rain do you normally get? And I think he said it's something like 16 inches is what they normally get there. And I'm like, what? Like, we can get 16 inches in a weekend. Yeah. Well, yeah. So it's just crazy, the diversity that happens just within Kansas. And,
then you look at places like Texas and you're like, man, West Texas versus East Texas versus.
Exactly. The size of Texas. Yeah. So it's just crazy, and even within our county here, you can go from the east side to the west side of our county. And, there's areas of our county, lots of areas of our county that are just as flat, and you can see 2-3 miles. And, and then there's areas where we've got rivers, we've got creeks, we've got hills, we've got, all kinds of stuff. So even hunting those, each one is a different hunt in and of itself, each property.
And that's what I love about it so much, is, if you hunt elk, you're going to be in the mountains. If you hunt antelope, you're going to be in the, the prairies, the flatlands. If you hunt, but with whitetails, dude, I've been to Maine, and it's like the thickest, darkest country you've ever seen in your life. Mm-hmm. Like when you step foot into that tree line.
Never been there, but I've heard.
Like when you step foot in that tree line, dude, you can't see. Like you've got maybe 8 yards to shoot a deer. Mm-hmm. Like it's crazy. And the sun, like when the sun goes down, legal shooting light might be 30 minutes after, but you can't see at sunset, much less 30 minutes after. Like, and so it's just such a different ball game, dude. Like, comparatively, then you, like I said, you drop down to Texas where there isn't a tree. Like you're in the southernmost part of Texas.
Well, they are, but you're taller than they are.
Yeah. There's, you sit on them, you're gonna get, never
everything bites.
Yeah.
Scratches.
I did have a guy one time I was down there, and it was my buddy Gabe. We were hunting, and I don't remember what. I think we were hunting Aoudad, and we were on an Aoudad ewe hunt. It's exactly what we're hunting, Aoudad ewes. And this Aoudad comes out, and he drops to the ground, and the way this played out, he was on the ground for like 12 minutes because we were waiting for this other ram to clear so we could shoot. And anyways, and he gets up, and dude just has cactuses all over his chest. And he laid there for like 12 minutes, but he never moved. And I'm like, nice, dude, you hung in there. Way to take one for the team. We didn't shoot one, but he went through all that for nothing.
Right, yeah. No, and I can tell you from my first experience going, out west, just here in the state of Kansas.
Yeah.
And doing the mule deer hunt. We did DIY first time. It was a completely different experience, and loved it. And I can tell you that learned an enormous amount, and it's just a completely different hunt.
Right.
And that's as sportsmen, that's the great thing is that I think we each will have our things that we enjoy the most, but for the most part, we all kind of cross and go over, and we'll hunt all different things. And you see a coyote, it turns into a coyote hunt immediately.
Yes, 100%. Dude, I started squalling. Yeah,
doesn't matter if you're going to blow out the deer or whatever, but that coyote.
I quickly turn into a coyote hunter. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Kip, I ask every single one of my guests for a hunting 101 field note, just a quick tip, trick, something that I can take and put in my back pocket and make myself a better hunter with. Why you think about that? I need to issue a question. If you listened to a couple episodes ago where we had Joey Zapmary down in Missouri, we're talking through our new 2023 setups, and I was running through my Execute 32 setup and the arrow setup I built, and I spent some time hunting with that arrow setup, and I quickly realized it's too heavy. Like I went too heavy. I think it was 670 grains this arrow weighed. So
nice.
A telephone pole.
Yeah. You said you were throwing spears?
Yeah. I quickly learned that it was too heavy. So I want to ask you this, and I want you to send me an email. I want to know what you think. I want to talk about it. At what point are you sacrificing too much speed for kinetic energy that you'll never need? At what point are you losing so much speed that the kinetic energy that you're gaining isn't even worth it? Like, where is that dividing line? And so if you've got the answer or you have an idea, shoot me an email, because I really want to talk about this and discuss this, because I did a little bit of experimenting and I found my ideal weight, but I want to hear from you. So let me know. I would love to talk about it, but I would also like to say I'm a massive believer in deer crossing archery arrows. I have been for a very long time. I shot them 9 years ago, and I've absolutely loved deer crossing archery arrows. The thing I love most about them is you call, you email, you get on their website, you get to build your arrows from the ground up the exact way you want them. So I chose my 250 ruptures, and I get to build out the outsert and insert kit exactly what I want. So if I want an Ethics full stainless steel or aluminum insert with stainless steel outsert, I get to choose all that and build that exactly how I want it. And then I get to choose my wrap colors, my vein colors, my knot colors, and he's going to send me a complete arrow, built, ready to go, fletched to the ideal spec weight I wanted it to be, with the insert and outsert how I want it to be. So throughout this, he's been a massive part in helping me find that deciding line of or that dividing line of speed versus kinetic energy. But again, I want to hear from you. And in the meantime, go check out Deer Crossing Archery for your next set of arrows, because I promise you one thing, you will not be disappointed. So Kip, what do you got for me on a tip?
I think we've kind of already touched base on it, and I think it goes scout.
Yeah.
It's
right now,
anytime. And with that being said, and it's easy to say, I walked uphill both ways during the snow, to school in the snow, waist high, and it was 110 degrees. But there's never been a time like now, with all of the technology that's out there, to be able to make your experience, or the experience, part of that experience is not, most people don't just go hunt by themselves. It's, or they don't go, go out shooting sports or target archery. You're doing it as an experience with people.
Right.
Whether you're competing by yourself, in a competition for your target shooting, or whether you're, it's an experience, it's camaraderie. But we've never been in an experience. I mean, you can build a house and a spaceship off of YouTube. So there is tons of information out there. Now you're gonna have to shuffle through it, and here we are talking on a podcast, giving information out. You got to shuffle through and see what's
decide what's credible.
Yeah, and even a step further than credible is credible also can be credible, but also not be relevant to you.
Right.
Based upon your geographic location, based upon your physical capabilities, based upon any number of different things, or what you want to do, or
shooting style, or broadhead.
Absolutely.
I mean, broadhead choice. I mean,
financial capability. Means.
Like, there's been times I'm looking at shooting tips for a recurve, and I start playing the video, and 3 minutes in, I realize he's talking tips for split fingers, and I'm like, I don't shoot splits. Yep. So, exit off that, go to the next one.
Yep. So I think scouting or research or preparation, you're going to have so much more of an experience, a great experience. You're controlling. Yeah. You're taking. That's something that you have control of, and so you can take control of that and limit the amount of things that are going to be, because there's an endless amount of things that are going to be out of your control that are going to happen while you're out there hunting.
Yeah.
And so then
like
you
the
can
coyote that runs by.
Exactly.
I mean,
and then it turns into a coyote hunt.
We've talked about the coyote, but like when I have. The instance with my boy is a perfect example. I had 3 does working out. Coyote runs out, blows them out. I'm like, well, I could not control when that coyote ran out. And if that was a giant buck standing there, so be it. Couldn't control that coyote that ran out. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's a chess match. Like, that's why it's this game of cat and mouse. I will say my tip to go along with that is you cannot hunt memories. And what I mean by that is, like, you can't just say, well, last year, all the deer came out from this area. Because what happens if a giant tree has fallen and blocked that way back in the woods that you can't see, and all of a sudden the deer come in 15 yards downwind of where you thought they were going to be coming, and you're screwed. Mm-hmm. Like, so you have to scout every year. I don't care if this property's been in your family for 100 years. You have to scout that property, and you have to figure out where the deer coming, where are they going, where are they bedding, where are they eating, where are they finding shelter.
Wind. We haven't even said wind once, direction. I don't think, in this entire conversation, but wind. And if that tree falls, and it's, I literally just had this happen. One of my properties, real close to one of my tree stands, giant cottonwood fell. Giant. Yeah. And it literally created a pinch point. Now, it's only going to be there for, cottonwoods, it'll be there for probably 5 years. Eventually, it'll decay and everything. But, man, this thing, it worked to my benefit. When I walked in, it made this pinch point that I was already hunting. It narrowed it down to, like, 20 yards instead of 40 or 50 yards. Yeah. And for the next 4 or 5 years, but then one thing that didn't cross my mind until a little bit later was the wind. That thing was so big. Blocked wind. It blocked the wind, changed the
literally changed the direction of the wind.
It changed the direction of the wind down there because it was kind of in a finger. Yeah. And there was a railroad track on one side, and so it just kind of created this kind of an artificial holler, if you will, kind of an artificial little valley, And again, this area, it's on a creek bottom, but it's still really flat. So it changed the wind, and I really had to pay more close attention to the wind that I didn't have to pay attention to before that tree fell. So
yeah, and I've had things change about properties that you never dude, I've had a guy show up like opening morning, and again, this property he'd hunted for 20 years, like, and he knew the property, he knew the ground, he knew all this stuff, and so scouting had become non-existent. You don't really think about it. I've got the same tree stand I've had for 10 years in there. I'm ready to go hunt. He goes out opening morning, and the tree stand tree got struck by lightning. It's gone. Like, you don't have nowhere to hunt that morning. Like, and he's calling me saying, "Dude, my tree stand." I'm like, "You're an idiot." Like, not only did you weren't checking tree stands for safety. Like, you didn't go out and check straps beforehand. But
exactly.
What happens when and a perfect example is I had a guy, same guy, different property, same guy. He went out, opening weekend or opening morning, and the power lines had come through. They were building the new power line system and wiped out like 50 acres of trees. Oh, wow. Not on his property, but on another property. and completely changed everything about what the deer were
that would
doing.
make a huge change.
Like 100%. I'm like, dude, you never went out and just sat with a pair of binoculars or looked or watched. Like, you never, like, we don't understand all the things that can change. And those are like man-made, that's a man-made difference. But again, you're talking about something that just happened.
You get big rains.
Yeah, wash it out.
They can wash out stuff, change creek direction, or change, they'll wash out. I mean, it's, you get big rains, and that can make a heck of a difference too.
100%.
And even when, we hunt creek bottoms a lot around here, or rivers around here a lot, if we get heavy rains, you got to kind of watch that, because that's going to change the direction of the deer and where they're going to go. And sometimes it'll change it for 2 or 3 days, or even a week or two.
Yeah.
Depending on,
absolutely,
on how much rain we've had. But yeah, it's Mother Nature.
Yeah.
It changes for sure.
Kip, you tell us about Powder and String. Where can they find you? Where can they tune in? Where can they get more information on you?
Well, we're Powder and String Outfitters, physically located downtown Wellington, Kansas. We are our web presence isn't. We don't have our website up and going. That we're hoping to have that done in the next 60 days. Worst case scenario, but we are on social media. Powder String, Facebook. We're on Instagram, YouTube. You have our YouTube channel, Twitter.
And you just started your own podcast.
We did, yes.
So if you've liked the soothing sound of Kip's voice, you can listen to that all year round on the Powder and String podcast.
All you can handle, bro.
My goal, Kip, I had a oh crap, who was it that told me? Now I can't even think of who told me this. It's a big name podcast host, and I don't even remember who it was. But anyways, he said he was at a show one time, like an ATA or something, and this guy walks up and he's like, "Holy crap, you're so and so," and he's like, "Yeah, nice to meet you." And the guy hollered over to his wife and said, "Hey, I want you to meet so-and-so." And she said, "Oh, I know who this is. I'm sick and tired of hearing your voice." And I'm like, that's my goal, man. Like, for women, for wives to get tired of hearing my voice because their husbands listen to me so much.
Yeah. Goals, dreams, and aspirations.
Yeah, that's it.
There you go. Yeah.
That's it. But before we go, I got to give a shout out to my friends over at Buck Bourbon, which I hope, Kip, to be carrying before too long.
Yes.
Because it is... If you run any kind of food or attractant, which, by the way, just because season is over does not mean the deer don't need supplication for their needs. So you should still be running food. You should still be running attractants, not necessarily attractants, but you should still be running supplements for your deer, salt licks and things of the sort, protein feeds. And so if you run any kind of those things, don't stop just because season's over. But I would highly encourage you to check out Buck Bourbon. I've absolutely fallen in love with the stuff. I store it in my garage, which is also where my gym's at, which is also where my bow shop's at, and I just love the smell of it. It just fills my garage with Buck Bourbon. But the deer absolutely love it. It's really good protein quality for your deer. So go check out Buck Bourbon for all of your food and supplication needs for your deer. Kip, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Happy New Year. This is the first episode of 2023, and so I'm excited about what this year has to bring. We'll be headed out to ATA this next week, and so I'll be bringing you some of those episodes with some of the guys from Bear on new products, new bows, new things they've got coming out, as well as other things in the industry. So, guys, make sure and tune in where we'll be bringing you all the information you need from ATA here on the podcast. Guys, thanks for listening. Y'all have a great week.